All right, guys. I watched a another great Japanese movie today, Tokyo Drifter. Seijun Suzuki. He's like one of those famous, legendary yakuza movie directors from back in the '60s in Japan. You've got Tetsuya Watari, who, if some of you might remember, our Outlaw Gangster VIP movie review. He's also the main actor in this movie, and actually, about two-thirds of the cast from that movie are in this movie. I'm guessing that's probably the way things used to work in Japan. Maybe they still do, but it's production companies. They've got all the same actors, and they end up playing all the parts in all the movies. Same actors constantly. But this is like it's a classic Yakuza tale. It's got all the things you expect in Yakuza storytelling. It's got the two warring factions. It has the loyalty, the duty, the betrayal, the rival gangsters that have sort of a mutual respect, but they still end up killing each other. And yeah, this is a perfect example of that. And this is also from 1966, and it's kind of getting into, and I've seen that specifically from this director, and even more so if you ever watch Branded to Kill, and maybe we'll talk about that another time. That movie is completely bonkers as far as the filming style, and it's not so crazy in this movie, but he goes into a lot of the kind of monochrome style. Like a lot of the scenes will be set up to kind of hint at a singular color. Like the guy in the scene will have a green jacket and everything will be accented in green, or there'll be a meeting of Yakuza bosses and they'll have reddish clothing and the scene will be lit in purple. So that's throughout this movie. It's almost like every major scene has like a monochrome, a very bright color to it that it's trying to accentuate. And sometimes even a little bit, like there's near the end of the movie where there's a couple times where the lighting on the accents will change colors uh, depending on what's happening to kind of accentuate the emotion of the scene. And so yeah, there's a lot of that stylistic experimentation. There's even one scene where it's like one of these Yakuza bosses' house. It kind of looks like um, it's almost like a Roman, like all the rooms look like they have these Roman paintings on them, and it's like there's carpet in this place, but then later on it's like dirt, and then there's like snow. There's a scene where there's like the shooting, and then there's just snow covering everything. So there's some of that impressionistic kind of stuff to it, but just barely. Like he does some things where he'll intentionally put this kind of filter over part of the screen, darken things out to accentuate other things, get you to focus on other things, but it's obviously an artificial thing that's just blocking what you're seeing. But so yeah, there's some of that experimentation. It's not so crazy as in something like I mentioned, Branded to Kill, but a little bit. But it looks, all that to say, it looks really nice. But yeah, it's your basic back and forth Yakuza movie. You've got two gangs, like the one gang initially that our main character is for. His boss is deciding to go straight. He's done with the lifestyle, but this other Yakuza group still wants his land. Like he has this big piece of property. They want it, and he owes money to this one guy. So they end up getting the debt from that guy, so that they can get his property. And meanwhile, our main character Tetsu, played by Watari, he's sort of the main enforcer of this group, and he is kind of devoted to, yeah, he's going to go straight too. He's not going to be, he's done being a Yakuza. Well, the Yakuza won't let them stop being Yakuza. It's also a very common theme. Uh, So they basically get the guy to sign over the loan to them. They take over his business. They run him. Like, there's a shootout that happens. The boss ends up shooting his own secretary by accident because he won't give in to these guys. So they have a shootout. He shoots his own secretary, who, by the way, was like cheating. She was like a spy for the other group, was feeding them information. But so Tetsu ends up taking, he says, I'll take the blame. Also a very common Yakuza thing. I'm going to take the blame for my boss. I'll say it was me. I'll go on the run. I'll be hunted by both the police and Yakuza. So he does that for his boss. It's just always this 100% all about duty and honor for your boss. And so he runs off, and that's kind of where the name Tokyo Drifter comes in. Is there's this theme song that plays through the whole movie, and one of the the main character's girlfriend, who's also his girlfriend from the same actress from Outlaw Gangster VIP, whose name I can't remember, but you can look it up. But she's a singer at this club, so she's singing this theme song over and over again about Tokyo Drifter, and they almost do it so much it's annoying. Tetsu even ends up singing this song throughout the movie, and he kind of uses to creep out his enemies, which it makes you think of Once Upon a Time in the West. That kind of thing was also used. The main character was always, he had his harmonic out, and it would freak everybody out, like all the spooky songs coming for us. But he'll do that. He'll sing this song and he'll whistle this song, and people are like, that fucking song. And honestly, by the end of it, I'm thinking that too. I'm just tired of hearing this tune. I mean, there's a lot of great music. In this era, it's like jazz got tied to these Yakuza movies. So you would hear a lot of jazz, but then there's also this sort of, they mix it with this Japanese folk style. So that's kind of the style of this song. And you just hear this theme over and over and over again. So it's a good song. It's just they overdid it. But yeah, so he's on the run, and basically things catch up with him. Even though he did the right thing, he still falls in with another group because he ends up kind of having to fall in with this group. But then back in Tokyo, his old boss, who he basically looked at as a father, gets squeezed into betraying him and saying, yeah, I'll do this and this, and they said, you can do this, we'll give you this, but you have to give up Tetsu. You have to give him up. So, of course, he betrays, another classic Yakuza theme. The boss betrays his underling, who he had all this devotion for. And so that kind of sets up the kind of the climax of this movie. But, the fighting's pretty good. The battles, they're more shootouts. It's not so much martial arts. But, it's our main character he's known as this like really badass shooter. And there's even this scene where he's having this shootout with this other Yakuza guy that's chasing him, and they're on the train tracks, and he's like, he even says earlier, like, he has this range because he's got this tiny little pistol. He's like, I have a 15-yard range, or what he says, 10-yard range. And so he's like standing on the train tracks, and the train's coming behind him, and he's facing the guy. And he does this thing, like, he runs forward to right at that distance, dives, shoots, and just gets the guy and rolls off the train tracks. And yeah, he even he does a thing where he'll throw his gun into the middle of the room, and the guys will come out being like, what the fuck was that? That was, they'll walk out like, okay, he threw his gun, and then he'll run and dive in, slide, grab his gun, and shoot 5 guys at once. And the one, which is kind of also pretty ridiculous, but the one that really is really fantastic in a goofy way is when he, at one point, throws his pistol into the air, runs around this way, and then catches it and then shoots the guy. So there's some of that over the top gunplay. They try to, it's like they try to make it a little realistic, but it's it's kind of goofy. You know, he's not, it's John Wick in the 1960s. They were trying their best, I guess. But yeah, so it's a lot of back and forth with the just the yakuza betrayal. There's different yakuza that come in. Like there's a one guy who's a retired yakuza for this other group comes in and helps him, and you know he ends up fighting on his side even though he was on the other side, and then he's fighting his own former allies to help him out, our main character. And I guess you know it all comes down. I really do like the. Oh wait, there is. Okay, so at one point he gets caught in his travels, and it just does this quick montage of these different cities he traveled to. But there's one where he's in this town. He's at a saloon. It's actually called the Western Saloon, and it's filled with American sailors. And then there's like this big chunky white girl doing a dance on the stage and like her feather outfit kicking her legs and stuff like that. And then these two yakuza come in and they start messing with the girl, and then the American sailor's like, hey, what are you doing? And so there's this big brawl that breaks out, and Tetsu happens to be in the back room. This is kind of the place he's hanging out. It's owned by these yakuza that are helping him out. And then just this fucking brawl, and this brawl just starts escalating into madness, and it basically becomes slapstick, full on slapstick. Balconies collapsing, people flying off of shit. There's like just people throwing chairs everywhere. There's even like once it really gets going down, and there's probably 100 people in this fight. There's this moment where all the white guys, all the Americans got beaten up, and they're like marching them out of this saloon. And then all the girls that worked at this place are like standing to the side, and they're like, 10 hut, 10 hut. And then they're like, about face, you know, like, and then they like turn and they look at him, and they all at the same time, all these women like bonk the American sailors on the head, and everybody laughs. It's a very slapstick, all out of nowhere, very slapstick. And then even one of the girls is like looks at in English and looks at one of the sailors is like, "Are you chicken?" and then they just beat these guys down, and then they clear them out. And as soon as that goofy scene's over, our main character just gets shot in the arm, like from behind. The other guy he thought you kind of think he had taken out from the rival gang comes back and just shoots him in the back. It just hits his arm, but you think he's dead for a second there. And then that guy thinks that he's dead, and he's like, I've done it. I've finally done it. And he just takes out a gun and fucking shoots himself in the head. You're like, holy shit. It was a very weird colliding of emotions in that scene, because most of this movie is very serious, and then this one scene is just really goofy and over the top, and then it's right back to this really serious kind of shit. He kills his rival and then just kills himself because he feels like he's accomplished what he needed to accomplish. Like, okay. So yeah, and you know, he catches up with this boss eventually, and there's like the kind of showdown. Like, fuck you, man. How could you do this to me? And he doesn't even kill him. You think he's gonna kill him, and he leaves him there. And the old man in front of him and the girl that, you know, he had a thing for, he just like takes this knife and just like cuts his wrist, and just blood squirts everywhere, and he fucking dies. And so that's another one of those Yakuza themes. Like, you didn't, you know, actually this happens earlier where he says, one of these guys that he doesn't kill comes to him and has a drop on him and says, why didn't you kill me when you had the chance? Like, that's worse. You need to burn in hell for that. Like, the guy wanted to go down in you know, in the fight, and he's like, fuck you, why didn't you do that? And this is the guy that ends up killing himself, right? So he's maintaining his honor, basically. But yeah, a couple times he doesn't kill his opponent, and they kind of look at it as you're this is a betrayal. Actually, you go to hell for that. You should have just killed me so I can go out with an honorable death. Which is, it's also that's a samurai theme, right? To die in battle for your fighting for your boss, fighting for your lord. That is the only death you really want, right? So I think this movie's pretty good. I mean, it's I don't know, it's a little slow in the kind of the middle part, and it kind of shifts tones a couple times where it's like you got this story going, you got these characters, and all of a sudden he runs off, and then there's like these other characters come in. So it feels a little disjointed to me, but I really like how it looks. Like I said, with the monochrome, the bright colors, it's the kind of stuff you don't really see anymore. And I think the best example of this is kind of the fight at the end in this, what is supposed to be like a club, but it's really this big white warehouse area. Everything's completely white. White piano, white chairs, a couple white tables and chairs. So it's like a bar with all the chairs, and everything's just completely white. And then Tetsu comes in and he's wearing a white suit now. So he's walking down this white hallway that almost looks like this like narrow church, like there's like these arches. Everything's just this pristine white. And then he comes in and the other yakuza are wearing black. So there's this like, and this is what I talk about the use of the color. There's this statue that looks like it's holding up a sun, and there's like red on this sun. Everything's white, and then there's red on this sun. And then they have this fight. And they'll pull back a lot, so you can see all this white starkness. And this is the whole final fight I talked about with the boss killing himself. But then he meets, so this thing is red, and it goes white after the boss dies. And then he's with his girl, and when they hug, it's like that sun turns yellow. So it's like signifying, okay, the light has come out. Everything is good now. We're no longer, like, the death is past us, right? So they do that there's a little bit of that symbolism as well, using the color, which I really like. So I want to give this, I mean, I can't say it's absolutely the best Yakuza movie I've ever seen, but it's very good, and it's definitely a good example of one of these movies. If you want to know, okay, what is this genre? What is it like? What does it represent? This would be a perfect example of that. So I would give it a 4 out of 5 for me. I think it's really good. It's still got that kind of old-fashioned plotting where you got to be paying attention because they're talking about different people, places, Yakuza bosses, these different business deals that are going down, who's betraying who. If you're not paying attention, you don't have any idea what the fuck's going on. So it does have that feeling of a lot of it is just talking. There's not as much action and kind of suspense as you would think. There's definitely this common thing of Yakuza in rooms, smoking cigarettes and drinking and just talking about either somebody being betrayed or who they're going to betray or what the fuck's going on kind of thing, like their property they need to develop and how they're going to, what they're going to do. So it's like there's a lot of that kind of stuff. So, for some people it might end up being a little boring, and it is kind of slow a little bit, but at times, but I think the way it's shot and the actors are great, and when the action does happen, it's pretty good. It's not too over the top, but it's done really well. And it's got that sad, dramatic hero kind of thing to it. Good soundtrack, even though that one song is definitely overdone. But so yeah, there you go. Tokyo Drifter. This is a Criterion release. It looks really nice, and if you want to know what an old Yakuza movie's like, this is a perfect example of that. So, see you next time. Hopefully, we'll be back soon. Back to our usual thing. Doing some traveling this week, so we had to mix it up. So, see you next time.